Il est 9 heures, passé de 35
is now
minutes,
9:35.
en direct. Comment sont déclinées justement maintenant, on rentre un peu plus dans le concret, ces mesures de relance
So now
par les
we'll have a
acteurs de la
look at
finance, par tout ce qu'il y a de lien
how
entre
different
les mesures de
tools
relance qu'on a évoquées
for
et
recovery
l'industrie des fonds
can be
d'investissement. On en
defined.
parle notamment avec vous, Laure Delahousse. Bonjour.
And Laure Delahousse, we'd like to hear from you first,
Il y a
Deputy
également
CEO of
Luc
AFG,
Investment
Luc
Partners,
Marwenda,
chez Euraseo.
Investment Partners of Euraseo.
Philippe
And
Sourla.
we're missing Philippe Sourla.
Bonjour à tous.
Ah oui, parce que
Philippe
effectivement, il est
Sourla
avec nous. Bonjour.
is joining
comment
us
ça va?
remotely. Hello, how are you?
Très bien, désolé de ne pas pouvoir être avec vous.
Sorry, I'm not
en
able to be with you
Je vous
in
attendais en
person.
présentiel, c'est pour ça. Secrétaire général adjoint en charge de la
Deputy
direction
Secretary General
de la
in charge
gestion
of
d'actifs.
asset
À
management
l'AMF.
at the AMF, the
On a vu
French
ce plan de relance. Comment il se traduit, c'est ça
Markets Authority.
Comment il se traduit concrement
So,
dans l'industrie de la gestion d'actifs?
In asset management,
Laure, votre
how do
objectif,
these
notamment, c'est de faire un
how
peu
does this
de
new
trade
plan translate into
en tant que gérant
work?
d'actifs, oui,
What
c'est
is your
faire le trait
objective?
d'union.
Well, our objective indeed is to build a
Après la crise,
bridge.
en mars 2020,
After
on a
the
commencé à
crisis
parler
in
de
March
relance.
2020, we started
Il y a eu
talking about
comme l'a
recovery.
bien dit tout à l'heure Sébastien, une première étape.
As Sebastian said, there was the
qui a
first
été,
phase,
de parer au plus
which was that
pressé,
we
donc
tried
avec
to
des prêts,
meet the most pressing
garantis,
needs
avec
with
des
guaranteed
subventions.
loans
On
and
part,
subsidies.
au plus pressé pour éviter
We
les
tried to
faillites
do what was
d'entreprises,
most
et puis très
urgent
vite,
to avoid
on a
bankruptcy in
commencé à
businesses.
parler, relance
And
sur le
then
long
we
terme.
started talking about
Qui
long-term
relance sur le long
recovery.
terme dit
Long-term
investissement,
recovery means
dit
investment,
investissement du
and
fonds propre pour
investment
les
means
entreprises.
equity
Et
for
donc,
businesses.
nous, gérants d'actifs, on est
And
le
as
trait
asset
d'union
managers,
entre,
we
les
are really the
entreprises
bridge
qui ont besoin
between
de fonds
businesses that
propres pour
need
investir, pour
equity to
innover,
invest,
et pour
to
retrouver une
innovate,
croissance qui
and
soit un peu
to
différente,
have a
même
new
accélérée,
kind of
comme l'a dit
growth,
Sébastien, par rapport
accelerated
au niveau qu'on
growth,
avait
as
avant.
Sebastian said.
Et nous sommes le trait d'union
And we are also the
entre les épargnants
bridge
et les
between
entreprises qui ont besoin
savers
de fonds
and
propres. Et
businesses
donc, d'où les
that
fonds
need
actions,
equity.
qui
And this
sont
is why
notamment mis en
we
valeur par
have
ce label relance dont on parlera tout à l'heure. Et ce
funds.
message de trait d'union, c'est un message
And this message of being a bridge is a message
qu'on porte depuis
that
longtemps,
we have been spreading for some time. We are like, we try to push long-term savings so that people have a more natural idea to invest in funds. And to repeat what Sebastian said, we're looking for disruptive growth.
Donc pour transformer ce plan de relance
There will be a resolution to the crisis we've been going through.
Comment vous
So,
accompagnez aussi, vous disiez,
in
la transition
asset management, how do you accompany the
4.0 notamment?
environment,
En tant qu'association,
the environmental transition?
réfléchi avec
Well,
le gouvernement
we've
à
been
ce-
thinking with the government
à ce
for some
label
time
relance, mais aussi on a
about
travaillé
this
sur d'autres
relance
aspects,
label,
du plan de relance,
but
comme
we've
les
been thinking about
obligations
other
de relance,
aspects
les
of the
prêts relance,
recovery
on a
plan,
travaillé
like
avec l'AMF sur ce
bonds,
sujet-là,
loans. We've been working with the
pour
IMF
essayer
on
de
that.
traduire
And we've been
cette
trying
volonté
to
politique de non seulement,
transform this political
donner
will
via le réseau, via les banques et via l'État de
using
donner
banks
des
and the
ressources aux
state
entreprises,
to free
mais
up
aussi à travers les banques,
resources
qu'elles soient
for
institutionnelles, pour des
companies,
assureurs par exemple, ou qu'elles soient retail,
insurance
des ressources pour les
agencies.
entreprises.
We're
Et donc,
trying to free up
dans
these
les-
resources.
on y reviendra je crois tout à l'heure, mais parmi le cahier,
I think we'll come back to it in a minute, but included in the constraints for the label, the relance,
sur l'ESG, donc sur l'environnement, sur
there
la
have
partie sociale, sur la
been
gouvernance des entreprises,
certain
qui étaient
requirements
partie,
regarding
intégrante du projet
ESG, environment,
par,
social
par le
governance
gouvernement
matters.
et porté par l'AFG.
And so
Le plan
part
de
of
relance
this
est à la
is
fois une nécessité de transformer un asset
borne by the
management, mais aussi
government
une
and part of it by
C'est une
the
opportunité
AFG.
pour l'économie
It's an
aussi,
opportunity
en
for
général,
us
c'est ce
and
que
for the
disait le
economy as
gouvernement,
well.
Bruno Le Maire a été très
Bruno Le
vocal
Maire
là-dessus en disant
spoke
on
about this a
connaît une
lot.
crise,
He said
et,
we're in a
on
crisis,
va faire tout pour qu'elle
and we're going to
passe,
do everything we
les
can to
résultats sont là,
get through it, and the
et on
results
va derrière
have
retrouver
proven
une
to be
économie
good.
qui
And
sera davantage tournée
after
vers
this, we'll
l'écologie.
see
On a
that
beaucoup parlé de
the
transition
economy will be
verte,
more
maintenant on parle aussi de transition juste,
focused
pour
on the
tenir compte de
economy.
l'aspect
We've
social
talked
qui est très
about the
important
green
et
economy,
qui
green
est imprégné de
transition.
notre culture de façon très
This is
forte.
now an
Et
important
donc,
part
cette
of our
relance,
culture. And so
c'est
this
pour trouver
recovery
derrière
program,
une
this
croissance
relance,
qui pousse des
will
investissements
be
verts, qui pousse des investissements
in favor
dans
of
la
green
formation
investment, investment in training,
des salariés, dans un
training
emploi
of
qui soit
salaried
davantage,
employees, investment in
collé
employment,
avec le digital par exemple.
employment
Donc, c'est un
in
investissement
the
qui
digital
doit tenir
sector,
compte de
for
ces
example.
objectifs, qui ne sont pas seulement financiers,
So
mais
these are objectives that are not
extra-financiers,
only financial, but also
Philippe.
extra financial, but that are
Petite question pour vous. Quelle est
the
l'application
objectives all come
de
together.
l'AMF, de l'Autorité
Philippe,
des marchés financiers dans,
with regard to the
dans ce label
IMF,
relance?
the French Financial Markets Authority, what what is your role in this relance, this recovery plan? Well, we are also mobilized, and everything that we've just heard is something that I agree with. This label was an initiative of the public authorities, and this is in a context where things have come together in a rather fluid manner with many different actors, many stakeholders participating, and I think there are many initiatives that are even more complex that have mobilized us. We've talked about the relance label, but there are other initiatives that are less visible. The FCPR Evergreen is something that is perhaps less visible, but FCPR venture capital market mutual funds are also enable people to invest in unlisted products. It's quite original in Europe, it's unique, and these FCPR Evergreen funds for retail investors, the launching of these have been very useful for us. We've been able to create a new investment environment, which is a good way to call on savings. So FCPR Evergreen is, what's unique about it is that it's open to retail investors. Yes, retail investors could already invest in the unlisted retail investment products, but they had to invest for a predetermined time. But with Evergreen, the funds are open for purchase over very long periods, or for 1 or 2 month periods. So this changes the nature of the product, and it changes distribution perspectives, makes it much broader in scope.
Luc,
Thank you very much. Luc, you're here for Euraseo. You are launching recovery funds as well. Yes, for us it wasn't very complicated because we deploy capital investment in unlisted companies for big institutional clients, but also for the retail market. So we have always had a vision of contributing to the development of businesses. And most of our funds for non-professional clients do have the relance label. There's one that's not, but the others all do, because we're completely integrated. It's natural to us to participate in the development of the economy with a long-term vision, with unlisted companies that are quite dynamic and that are experiencing significant growth. So it was quite natural for us. And we've had a lot of success with these funds because we have been able to attract quite a lot of investment. Afterwards, the subject of valorization, that's a different subject. And that's not what we're here to talk about today. How do you choose the businesses? What are your criteria? Are there specific targets? Well, at Euraseo, we have a platform. We manage 6 billion euros. And we are private equity investors. That's what's most important for us. We have some real estate. We have some private debt. We work with startups. We work with buyout companies. We work with Mano or Doctolib, which are digital companies. So we have quite a wide range of companies, and we have a team that's dedicated to each type of strategy.
On reçoit un très grand nombre de dossiers.
We, of course, receive a lot of requests,
En fait, ils sont doubles.
and our criteria for selection are twofold. First of all, on operational aspects, is there sense to this company? Is it a good business plan? Do we believe this can develop? But also, very important, do they have best practices with regard to governance? Do they cover ESG, social inclusion? Because a company that will have success in the long term is a company that has good relations with its employees, with its investors. You can have a company that has a good product, for example, but if they don't have good relations with their shareholders and their employees, then they'll fall flat on their face. So that's one thing that our investors look for as well. All of our investments, we weigh economic and financial criteria, but also extra financial criteria.
Ok, mais comment il fonctionne concrètement? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a derrière?
So what's behind this Relance label, Laura? Well, there is a charter that asset management companies have to follow. It has to do with investment in equity.
À respecter, donc d'investissement dans ces entreprises françaises.
One criteria is investment in French companies, a minimum level of investment in French companies. It's a label
donc dans ces entreprises françaises. Mais à côté de ces exigences, qui sont la base, il y a d'autres
is given to companies that do invest in France.
C'est-à-dire que ces fonds doivent notamment investir dans ces entreprises.
These funds must invest in businesses that are going to bring about growth. There are also criteria regarding the environment. So the company must have a strategy for reducing greenhouse gases. There must be social criteria. When we're looking at value sharing with the employees, share participation, for example.
Donc sur le social, il y a aussi
and then the social level, there's also training. That's a very important part of the label. The businesses must invest in training and training in France to create jobs in France. And there's also the criteria of equality between men and women with regard to salaries and positions held. So it's that is the IMF approach too. It's sort of like the IMF approach to the label. We are mostly working in companies that have attained the Relance label. These are French companies. What's quite unusual with regard to the usual strategy, which is to promote European businesses, here we're looking at French companies, in particular for UCIs that are listed. We have half of our funds that are with the Relance label. There's an important share of small and medium companies. And there's a lot of reporting that has to be carried out by the asset management company with regard to capital increases that prove that there is more investment in the companies that we're promoting. And also that employment has been created in France. Do we know much about the sustainability of this label? Do you think it will exist in a few years? Or? Well, this is something we've been discussing with the French Treasury Authority because when you invest in shares, you're usually thinking about a long-term investment. So this is true for savers as well. So sometimes you take your time and making up your mind what to invest in, and then you keep your investment in place for a long time. And so we've been discussing with the Treasury authorities. The label will, of course, be awarded for the next 6 months, but then the label will remain, but there may be a time when it will not be awarded anymore. So what we argued was that it should be extended, that time should be extended, because we need to have that length of time, because investment in shares is a long-term project.
Philippe, pour l'AMF, il y a pour vous une prise de conscience dans cette crise de l'importance de ces investissements qui ont un impact positif sur l'économie, le SG, l'ISR.
What do you think will be the impact of this on investment over the long term? Well, before the crisis, we already saw that this extra financial theme was really emerging in the market, and the crisis definitely accelerated that. We can see that there are a lot of initiatives that touch on ESG, things that are not central to the product themselves necessarily, but we have a lot of talk about impact investment and impact on the real economy. So these discussions have been very interesting. And over the long term, I think regulations will certainly accompany this transition. One example is a lot of discussion about SFDR. And we're looking at new MIF rules concerning investment counseling, investment advice. And so these extra financial matters will certainly be on the table.
L'impact, encore une fois, d'un investissement sur l'économie.
Yes, we talked about impact investing.
Après, derrière, quel reporting
we all agree that this impact investing is more and more important, but how can you measure it? Well, we can see that many investors and clients are concerned with the impact of their investments. These are complex discussions that are underway now also with regard to how we can measure or prove the impact. We need to look into these issues carefully and not take any shortcuts. It's not because I have invested in a portfolio that has some parts that are a bit less, or that have been working on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, for example, that it can be considered a positive impact investment. So we have to, it's a complex issue. We have to think about it a lot more and how we can analyze and measure the true impact. So how can you calculate a good investment? An investment with a good impact, and how can we reassure savers who want to make good and impactful investments? Well, we could spend all day talking about that. I think there are different types of investments, of course. You can see that the levers of influence are not the same if you're investing on secondary markets or on the stock market. I think that there are different modalities of investment, and so there will be different ways of taking account of the impact. We need to educate investors, I think, on this complex subject. We need to teach them more how they themselves can evaluate. But we can't move towards an simplification by just using some metric that would
Merci Philippe. Luc,
give a rating to an investment strategy.
Vous mesurez cette appétence qu'on a tous.
How do you measure
cette réaction des investisseurs
this new appetite
l'investissement durable à ce label relance
for sustainable investments or the relance label and so forth? Well, I think
ce qui est important, c'est que le marché,
what's important is that
qui place nos produits,
in the market and the distribution of financial products, we have tens of thousands of clients that we serve every year. Investors are interested in this subject, and this is quite new.
Quelquefois, c'est toujours un petit peu compliqué.
Sometimes it does seem a bit complicated to explain what different products correspond to. It can be complicated to explain, but
sur le fait que un fonds
We need to be clear.
Qui fait que des opérations d'augmentation de capital, c'est relativement simple à expliquer.
Talk about a fund
vous avez un
that
portefeuille,
seeks
vous avez
to
une trentaine de
increase its
sociétés
capital. You have a
d'investissement.
portfolio, you have
Vous
30
avez
different
chaque
companies.
histoires qui sont assez simples. Et en fait,
You can understand what's happening in each one. The
sociétés, en
objective
fait,
is to
elles sont logées dans un fonds
make
d'investissement qui
profit.
bénéficie de la belle relance. Et pourquoi est-ce qu'on a ce label relance? Justement,
Sometimes
parce
you
qu'on a
may
ces critères,
hold shares
qui
in a
sont assez
fund
objectifs quand
that
même,
benefits
assez-
from the Relance
assez-
label, but
assez simple à comprendre.
why does it benefit
Les
from
autres
that?
sont
It
pareils.
might not be very
C'est un
easy to
argument
explain every
qui est,
time, but
supplémentaire
it
qui vient
is
aider en
an
fait
added argument that we can
à
use
convaincre les
to
investisseurs. Alors,
encourage
c'est
investors.
pas non plus une révolution, mais
to
si
come
vous voulez,
into
c'est
a
quelque chose de
mutual
très
fund.
positif qui vient
It's not a revolution, but it is a
alimenter
positive
cette tendance croissante en fait
label
de la
that
demande d'investisseurs non
can
professionnels sur ce type
correspond to the desires and needs of non-professional investors who want to know more about the products they're
Comment
buying.
est-ce qu'on fait? Je pose la question à O3, on manque un petit peu de
Now
temps.
I'd like
Qui
to
a envie de
ask the
répondre?
three of
Comment est-ce
you,
qu'on fait pour éviter que ce soit déceptif? Encore une fois, pour
how can we
l'épargnant.
avoid this being a deceptive
permettre,
label for investors?
Il faut que
Well,
l'épargnant...
it's important that savers
Ça veut dire que
hear the right sales
on
argument.
voit cette montée en compétences
We can
de
see
la part
that
des réseaux de distribution, cette
the distribution
montée en
networks have
compréhension
more
de
and
la part
more
des
skills, and investors
On voit de
are
plus en
more and
plus
more
de gens
aware
qui comprennent
and
que,
understand better and better
le fonds euro c'est terminé.
that the Euro Fund is
Si
finished,
on veut participer,
and that
au
if they
financement
want to
de l'économie,
participate
il faut
in the
avoir un raisonnement de long terme.
the financing of
Il faut
the
se dire,
economy, they have to have a long-term
très bien, dans mon
vision.
patrimoine, j'ai besoin d'avoir des placements liquides, mais aussi je peux
Of
aussi
course, people
consacrer
need
mon patrimoine
liquidities, but they also want to invest
à des
in something
placements
that's
non
long-term,
de long
that's
terme.
patrimonial,
Et là, je
that's
vais vraiment
not
contribuer,
liquid, that's long-term,
à l'économie,
and they want to feel like they're
un certain
really
risque,
contributing
évidemment,
to
mais
the
aussi
economy.
avec
Of course, there are
à la
risks
clé,
to be
des
assumed,
possibilités
but
de grande plus-value significative.
the
Je
idea
pense que
is
ça,
that at
c'est
the
très
end they could
important.
have significant
Cette,
value added,
cette
and that's
bonne,
important.
pratique
These
au
good
niveau des
practices
investisseurs, elle est fondamentale. Et
that
si
comes
on arrive à
from
faire
the
ça
investors
à
themselves
un
is
plus grand
fundamental.
nombre de clients, je crois qu'on aura gagné.
And I think that the more customers that have this mindset, the more we will be able to operate efficiently. We ask the same questions at AFG. The financial education of customers is something that's very important to us, and it's very important to our CEO.
Les 12 principes pour bien investir à long
And
terme.
we have
Ça reprend des choses évidentes.
drafted a list of the 12 best practices for investing that we give to our clients. Save regularly, save early,
Regardez aussi des coûts.
look at the costs, discuss with your advisor. We have listed 12 principles, 12 basic principles for good investment, and these can enable the investment counselor to
On
work
finit quasiment
best
là-dessus.
with
Juste,
his
Philippe,
client.
dans la relation entre le
And
conseiller et le
Philippe,
client, est-ce que la
just to
AMF
finish in the
prévoit
relationship
des initiatives
between
dans un
the manager
questionnaire,
and the client, does the AMF have some kind of a questionnaire regarding the
avant qu'il investisse?
extra financial qualities of investments? Yes.
Alors, je rajouterais peut-être,
And
voilà, une notion, c'est vraiment le travail
I would add that
sur la qualité de l'information.
there's a lot of work being done now on the quality of information so that people will not be disappointed or deceived in any way by their investments. In the MIF2 directive, it is obligatory for people to have all of the information needed for their investment. The questionnaire has not been drafted yet. The final draft does not exist yet, but ultimately there will be definitely a framework for defining the relationship between investors and investment advisors. So thank you very much, Laure de la Housse, Philippe Sourdas,
Maintenant, quelques chiffres
and
clés. Voilà, c'est
Luc
l'idée.
Marouenda.
Quelques chiffres clés.
discover cases.